So things like sustainability managers or food waste managers or, production managers in food manufacturers and so on, that are really interested in taking their academic qualifications to that next level, but without having to leave their job.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Food Waste Matters, a podcast that is dedicated to having conversations with people and organisations who are part of the fight against food waste. And today, my guest is Dr. Stephen Lapidge. He is the CEO of End Food Waste Australia. And he'll have lots of things to share with us today about what the organisation is doing and what's coming up. One of the things we're going to be talking about is the National Food Waste Summit. Now, this summit is open to anybody who's interested in learning about what is happening in the area of food waste. It's happening in Melbourne in July, and all the information can be found on the End Food Waste website. But before I bring him to the stage, I just wanted to share a little story with you about what happened to me this week. So I am in Singapore as I'm recording this episode, and I'm up here because I attended Food and Hotel Asia, which is the biggest trade show that attracts people involved in food from all over the region. And while I was looking at all the different people and companies exhibiting there, I came across a really interesting stand. And it's something that I had noticed when I was walking around the streets here in Singapore. There are all these vending machines where you can get a fresh orange juice. It's pressed in the machine, and you pay your money and you get this beautiful cup of cold orange juice. But I had never thought about the fact that if that was happening, that in the back of the machine, inside the machine, would be all this orange pulp and skin and all the waste that's created when they create a cup of juice. And lo and behold, when I was walking around the trade show, I came across a company who had also seen the problem. And so what they've done is they now go around and collect all of the pulp and the skin from these machines, and they turn it into marmalade. Now, I mean, that's a great and simple solution, but it's one I hadn't thought of. But I had seen that there was a potential problem in what do you do with waste. And I think it's fantastic that there were so many stories of people out there who are identifying these problems and identifying solutions to them. So without any further ado, let's welcome Stephen Lapidge to the podcast. So Steve, tell me a bit more about what you and all the team at End Food Waste Australia have been doing since we last talked.
Hi, Jane. Great to see you again. We've had a really busy time in Food Waste Australia. The main thing we're working on at the moment is a new 2024 to 2030 strategic business plan. For many of our partners, they'd be aware that our CRC funding goes through to 2028, so we're in year 6 of 10. The National Food Waste Governance Entity funding, what was previously known as Stop Food Waste Australia, actually finishes mid-year this year. And then we have some campaign funding that will go for another just over a year after this, or 18 months. But that leaves us well short of 2030. And we've got a big target to achieve, that halving of food waste. That's all food loss and waste in Australia by 2030. And so there's a real gap at the moment. And the strategic business plan is about trying to fill that gap. And it really presents the business case around what it will take to halve food waste in Australia by 2030. And it's probably one of the few plans I've seen anywhere in the world that really outlines what it's going to take to get there. Both in terms of the human resources, but the finance and the key activities that we really need to be pushing. So on that one, we will be discussing it in detail next week here in Adelaide. The whole team and the board are in Adelaide. Even doing a pre-mortem session. I'm not sure whether you're aware
A
of that process,
pre-mortem
a
session.
pre-mortem session, just
No.
to look at any bugs that may come up. And then we'll look to launch that strategic plan at our summit in July. And before then, we'll also do some stakeholder engagement with some of our key major stakeholders just to make sure that they're aware of what's in there before there is a public release. So lots
Great.
happening on that front.
Yeah. And
The
just before you go on to the next section, how can our listeners find out more about that?
Our website will outline
Mm,
what's going on at the moment. There's nothing public around the strategic business plan at the
okay.
moment. We're still
Yeah.
in draft format.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
have our previous strategic plan, which was
Mm-hmm.
created in 2018 when the CRC commenced, and that is on our website. But we've evolved a lot since that time. That original strategic business plan was really only focused on how the CRC will achieve its objectives. And of course, given your experience in CRCs as well, Jane, you know
Mm,
that you really set that out in the business case that you submit to the Commonwealth Government to get the funding in the first place. So in many ways, that was an easy strategic plan. This one is a much harder
mm,
one because we're trying to achieve a national target,
yeah.
and we need everyone on that journey to achieve that national target. We certainly can't do it alone, even though we are the peak body in Australia for achieving that target.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely the theme that's coming through all of these episodes is how everybody really needs to be working together on this. That every little bit helps, but we also
Absolutely.
need to work together on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Great. So you mentioned leading into the National Food Waste Summit, but I think there's a few other things. We'll come to that in a minute. But I think there's a couple
Yeah.
of other things that you wanted to mention, which
Look,
sound really exciting for our listeners. Yeah.
a really exciting development we will launch next Tuesday evening at KPMG in Adelaide, and that's our
Mm-hmm.
industry PhD program. So,
Okay.
our listeners have probably heard of our Future Leaders program that we've run with Central Queensland University and KPMG almost since the start of the CRC. We're now at our full complement of PhD students. We've still got a couple of master scholarships available, but we're looking at what next in terms of PhD. So, our KPI with the Commonwealth Government is to enrol 30 PhDs and graduate 25, and we're certainly on track to do that. But we'd like to
Mm-hmm.
over deliver in this area. And
Mm.
with PhDs and well, with CRCs, they have a mandate of training the future workforce in whatever sector that CRC is focused on. And you either take really bright students and put them through their normal PhD or master's training, and then give them the extra help that they may need to become more commercial in their nature. So ours do a graduate diploma or similar in research management or commercialization, project management, where this program is really starting at the other end, finding the
Oh,
smart people in industry that want to do their PhD on the job. And so they need to be in that right kind of position. So things like sustainability managers or food waste managers or production managers in food manufacturers and so on that are really interested in taking their academic qualifications to that next level, but without having to leave their job. Now, obviously,
wow.
the industry partner or the employer needs to approve that, but they don't
Mm-hmm.
have to put any extra money in. It's just continuing to pay the salary of that employee. We provide the operating to that student, and they get enrolled with one of our partner universities and work on a really systematic approach to understanding food waste in that particular food business and then mitigating it. And there will be experimental work, which any PhD needs, but in
Mm-hmm.
the end, they're really providing an amazing service for a food manufacturer that often that people wouldn't find the time to do. And of course, then that can count towards their ESG reporting and so on. Now, there is another
That's
way there. So that's for
mm,
the on the job people already employed, but we will be looking to embed PhD students within industry. And in that case, the industry partner puts in $100,000 over 3.5 years. The CRC matches that. and the student remains embedded within that industry partner and focuses their PhD entirely on that business. So it's a great way to for recruiting best and the brightest into that business in the future, and they will understand that business by the end of their PhD, better than anyone else in terms of where the food waste hotspots are and how to address them. And
Yeah.
they should be any partner, and ideally Australian Food Pack members will have first right of refusal in terms of the scholarships, but any partner should be able to claim their contributions on the R&D tax incentive as well, because it's dedicated research for that business. So, there's a win-win situation for all involved, and it means that we will hopefully, our legacy will be some really amazing people already embedded in industry to
Mm.
carry on this field after the CRC funding finishes.
That's a really innovative approach, I've got to say. I've been around universities and PhDs for a long time, and there's always been that gap, hasn't there, of how do you get the learnings and the benefit of a bright person into industry, and equally, how do you get the bright people in industry working and getting recognition for and getting access to some expertise to really help them move through their jobs and benefiting the industry and the business. So that sounds amazing. So I look forward to finding out more about that. We will keep people up to date on that through this podcast, and you'll be able to get the information through our show notes. But really looking forward to that. I think that's a superb um, and innovative approach from you guys at End Food Waste Australia. It's great.
Thanks, Jane. And just to let people know, I mean, the guidelines for that program will go live probably Wednesday morning. We will
Okay,
do the launch, as I said, at KPMG in Adelaide on
it's
Tuesday, the 14th
the
of
14th.
May.
Yep,
Yep.
yep.
So by the time this goes live,
They will already be out. Yep.
yeah, but the guidelines will be up on our End Food Waste Australia Future Leaders website, but there'll also
Okay,
be links from the Australian Food Pack
great.
website.
We'll make sure that we put all those links into the show notes so people can go directly and download that, because I think that is a fantastic opportunity for
Yeah.
our listeners. So that's fantastic. Is there anything else that's two big things, Steve? Have you got anything else?
Yeah, well, they've certainly been taking up a fair bit of time, but yeah, I think they're both really good initiatives and will set us
Mm,
up well for some time. But of course, the other big event for us coming up is the third National Food Waste Summit, which is on in July in Melbourne, and we're
yep.
really looking forward to that event. We've just been able to release some of the speaker lineup,
Mm-hmm.
and very keen for people to understand the benefits of attending the summit, and the fact that we've probably got the best international representation of of almost any food waste summit. Some really key industry people that know the food waste field globally incredibly well from an industry perspective, that will actually be here in Australia in person to talk to people as well. So, it's a really
Great.
exciting time just locking in all those final speakers for the summit.
Great. And it's not just the speakers, is it? It's the people who will be there as well that you'll be able to network with. And I know you've got some little events around. So you've got your main stage, and then you've got a few other little things that are more up close and personal, really. And I know Dr. Freeman, who's my co-host on this podcast, she'll be speaking there about some of her work, and I've also heard of some of the other speakers. Can you give us a little bit of a tease as to who some of those
Well,
are and get people
without
to? I'd
mentioning
like to
names,
get our yes.
yeah, I did give it a little bit of a tease. So our MC for the event is Costa Georgatos, who is the host of ABC Gardening Australia and an incredibly passionate foodie and
Great.
composter. And
Yeah.
yeah, his energy levels, I think, will keep everyone really enthused throughout the 2 day event. One of our keynote speakers is Craig Rucastle, who many would know from ABC War on Waste. When we do surveys, public surveys around what do you know about food waste? The first name that normally comes up is Craig, and
Yes.
it was. We thank Craig, well, have in the past, because his first series of War on Waste was aired just before, well, while we were going through the bidding process for this
Mm.
CRC, and no doubt helped us immensely. So it'll be great to catch up with Craig again. He always puts on a great talk. Other speakers are Dana Gunders, who is my equivalent for an organisation called ReFed in America. And ReFed is started
Mm-hmm.
life as a food waste economic think tank, but they've expanded nationally and cover a lot more now. They have an amazing role in rallying philanthropic funds into the food waste area in America,
Great.
and yeah, really innovative organisation. Do a lot with startups as well. I'll actually go to their conference in June, which
Mm-hmm.
will be my first time, and so really looking forward to seeing how they run their events and bringing some of that back to Australia as well.
Yep.
Other speakers, we have Yolanda Dings, who is with a company called Lamb Weston, biggest potato company in the world, I believe. And Yolanda is someone who I saw present, I think it was at the OECD many
Mm.
years ago, and her talk blew me away. I think I learned more from that than I had, in the previous several years in
Yeah.
reading journal papers and so on. And she is
Wow.
a great speaker, and she'll be good to see. First time to Australia. Caitlin Dawson, so my equivalent in New Zealand, who runs New Zealand Champions 12.3, will be coming over and presenting at the event. One of the leading on-farm food loss experts is Lisa Johnson, and she'll be
Yep.
coming out from the US for that. So horticulture companies can really learn a lot from hearing from Lisa, and really
Yeah.
encourage them to get along. And of course, Victoria is a large horticulture area, so it'd be great to get some of the
Yeah.
big players into the summit. And always one of the most popular speakers at our events is Twan Timmermans. And Twan
Yeah.
is one of our directors. He's from Wageningen University and Research in the Netherlands, but he also heads up, he's CEO of Food Waste Free United, which is our equivalent in the Netherlands. And they are probably one of the big heavy hitters in the food waste field globally, and the work that they've done over recent years, both with industry but also in the consumer behaviour change space, is world leading.
Wow. Big 2 days.
So it will be a big
Mm.
2 days. I mean, that's only the people
That's
I
just
mentioned
part
is
of it.
only a fraction of the speakers. I
Mm.
think there's nearly 50 speakers in total, or panel members, and so it's not only is it great to hear the talks, it's also a fantastic networking event, and we really focus on that with decent length morning tea and lunch breaks, and we've got a networking
Yeah.
event on the evening, cocktail event with student posters and so on. So, and there'll be some
Fabulous.
awards at that as well. And
Ooh.
I can tell you that there will also be a couple of big announcements on day two. I won't say any more there, but some
Oh,
of the
that's a tease. You've got to get to the summit.
interesting developments we've been working on with some new industry partners. And I really look forward to
Fantastic.
working with them. So hopefully that gives a
Well,
good
that's
snapshot of where we're at.
that's a great snapshot. Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks, Steve, for giving us a great update. We will put for all the listeners. We will put all of the details for everything that Steve is talking about in the show notes for you. And we hope that we could see you at the National Food Waste Summit. And so there you have it. That was the update from Dr. Stephen Lappage. He's the CEO of End Food Waste Australia. And they have a big challenge, and that's to help us all achieve halving of the food waste issue in Australia by 2030. And he mentioned the strategic planning process that he and his team are going through right now, and how that is all going to be revealed and talked about at the National Food Waste Summit. This opportunity only comes around every 2 years. They've got a great lineup of speakers, and I'm certainly going to be there, because what I find when I go to these things, and I don't go to too many of them, but when I go to conferences like this, I sometimes just have to hear one thing, and it makes such a difference to my business and to the way I do things. And you never know where that is going to come from. It might come from the speakers, or it might come from just having a chat to someone like you, facing similar challenges to you as you're standing over a cup of tea. So if you haven't booked your ticket to the National Food Waste Summit, I really, really encourage you to do so. It's on in July in Melbourne. I'm going to be there. Joanne Freeman, who is the co-host on this podcast, will be there. And many of the people that we have interviewed so far will also be there. So we hope to see you there as well. And the final thing I want to remind our listeners about is this really innovative industry-based PhD program that they've come up with. Those guidelines are now available when you're listening, when this episode's released. They will already be available. It is for two things. One is for an industry person to stay in their job and get the guidance and the support needed to do a PhD on the work that they're doing in their jobs. And the second part of it is for businesses to be able to employ a PhD student, and they would work for the business for the 3 years while they are doing their PhD. So that to me sounds like a win-win situation for everybody, and certainly helps with bringing through the next generation. So I encourage you to have a look at all of those things that Stephen told us about. We will include all of the links to all of those things in our show notes. So thank you for listening to another episode of Food Waste Matters, and I look forward to meeting you soon. Take care.